Hello everyone, my name is Jamie. Welcome to another recommendation video. I have not done a recommendation video in such a long time. I think the last one I did was like romance trope oriented, but today we're going to be doing a thriller recommendation video because I have been reading so many thrillers recently. Like the past couple of months I feel like I've only really been reading thrillers, or at least the only books that I've really been enjoying have been thrillers. So I thought, because I've read quite a few now over the past few years, I thought I would share with you some of my favorites. And if you are new to the genre, I feel like this is a really good place to start. But yeah, with that spiel out of the way, let's just get straight into my favorite mystery thrillers and just some books that I really think that you guys would enjoy and you should pick up. Let's start with a thriller I have read the most recently, which is Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothchild. This book is really fantastic. Basically, the plot of this novel, we follow our main character Ruby. When she was 5 years old, she saw a bully at her school who was like notorious for like bullying her older sister. She saw him struggling in the waves at the beach in Miami, and she realizes how easy it would be to kill him. So at 5 years old, she goes and like holds him under the water, and no one questions her. She's just a 5-year-old playing in the ocean, and she waits for the guilt to kind of seep in that she has taken someone's life, and it never does. So while this character might seem really villainous, really morally grey, we learn so much about her life, like not just about her like killing the odd person who she thinks is a bad person, also just like her growing up, going to university, her friendships, her romances. And while we're learning about this history of her life, we're also following a detective interviewing her because she is under investigation because her husband recently died, although this is not one of the bodies she has collected. So she is under suspicion of murdering her husband, and that brings up all the other kind of dead bodies that she has been in the vicinity of. It was just such a good book, and I think one thing about the thriller genre is that sometimes it can really rely heavily on the big like plot twist. This one really doesn't do that. Like there isn't really a big plot twist, I would say. It's just kind of a really good like edge of your seat story following a really complicated main character who you can't help but empathize with, even though she has like literally murdered people. It was just really, really unique, really great. A debut novel as well, so I'm so excited to read more by this author, and I genuinely like really highly recommend this novel. Next we have The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Lucy Foley has fast become a very popular thriller author. However, I thought her two novels before this one were just okay. Paris Apartment is her most recent novel that was released this year, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's a really good place to start in the thriller genre. Basically, we follow our main character Jess. She has gone through some troubles in her hometown in London, so she goes to visit her brother Ben, who has this really nice room in this apartment building in Paris, and when she gets there she cannot find her brother at all. So she's really confused about like what has happened. She hasn't heard from him even though he was expecting her. So she kind of meets with all the other people that live in this apartment building and tries to find out more about what happened to her brother while dealing with all these kind of shady characters. It is also told from like multiple different perspectives, so we do get to hear from everyone who lives in the building as well as our main character Jess. This just had so many twists and turns. Like I feel like from the very beginning it did a really good job at like really confusing the reader, but not in a way that it's like convoluted, in just a way where it's like, who do we trust? What is going on here? Like what is shady, what is normal, what is a red herring? The plot twist did get me by surprise, which is always very good in a thriller. I think when it becomes too predictable I do roll my eyes a little bit, but this one was really good. It's been nice seeing how Lucy Foley improves as an author with every release that she has. Also, the writing in this book is incredibly digestible. I read it in one sitting. It's really easy to consume, and it is a page turner. You do just want to keep reading. So I do really recommend this one. Next I have They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. Do not let the cover steer you in the wrong direction. Like this is a really good book. I thought it was YA looking at this cover, but it's actually definitely not. Basically, we follow our two main characters, Scarlett and Carly. Scarlett is a professor at a university and Carly is a freshman student. So each chapter is from a different perspective, and I think halfway through the novel you learn how their kind of stories interconnect, and it is ingenious the way that the author has done this. But basically, Dr. Scarlett Clark, our professor character, every year she murders someone. She gets rid of a male student or just a male in her area in her life who has done something awful to women. So for example, in the first chapter, she's literally murdering a guy who date raped a female student, and she talks about how in the past she has murdered someone who was very physically abusive towards his girlfriend. She has like killed perverts, creeps, like just gross men who do awful things to women. And then Carly, her perspective, she's starting this new university, she's kind of having this like sapphic romance, and she's witnessing men doing awful things and like being creeps, and it's just such a good book. Like, plot twist, amazing, like it's so good, and the characters were both just so well fleshed out. I don't know, I just love books like this. It really reminded me of like the adult version of some of the more YA novels that I love, like Fowler's Fear or Female of the Species. It's very much in that vein, and I just really loved it. And of course, all the sapphic love stories in here, perfect, like the most perfect little like B storyline. I most of the time hate when thrillers have a romantic subplot, but this was just perfect, effortless, it didn't feel forced, and it felt very necessary to the story. So I really loved this, and I highly recommend this to all of my girlies out there. Next we have The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I read this very recently, and I rated it 5 stars. It was absolutely incredible, and it very much took me by surprise. So basically we follow our 2 main characters, Ted and Lily. We get dual perspective from them as well, which is clearly one of my favorite writing conventions. But Ted and Lily meet at an airport, and they get talking, and Ted explains how he has recently found out that his wife is having an affair, and Lily talks about how she seems like the kind of person that is worth murdering. Like, why don't you murder her? Like, she doesn't sound like a good person. And so that's all from Ted's perspective, him and Lily getting together and like planning to how to get away with murdering his wife. And then from Lily's perspective, we learn more about her history and her life growing up, and she is kind of an accomplished murderer at this stage. Lily's very similar to the main character in Blood Sugar, I think, where you're kind of on her side with these murders. Like, she's not murdering like innocent civilians, she's murdering people that have like done bad things to her. One of them is like a questionable bad thing, like you probably could have just like not killed him and maybe punished him some other way, but she's still such a great character, a really good interweaving of storylines, and again, so many twists and turns, like all over the place. It really caught me off guard at so many different stages in the novel, and it is such a page turner. You just don't want to put it down. Peter Swanson is definitely going to be an author that I read a lot more from, and this is also just a really good place to start in the genre. So I really recommend this. Next, I have No Exit by Taylor Adams. I actually read this earlier in the year, and I completely read this in one sitting as well. I wasn't even making videos at the time. I just like fully read it in one sitting because I could not put it down. But basically we follow our main character Darby. She is driving to her mother's house for Thanksgiving, and she stops at a rest stop because the snow is just crazy. Like, she has to stay at a rest stop overnight, and while she's there, there's 4 strangers, and when she goes out to try and get service on her cell phone, she sees that a little girl is trapped in one of the cars, like in the boot of like one of the trucks that is at the rest stop. So while she's like stuck at this rest stop, she's like, there is someone who is a kidnapper here, and she's really trying to figure it out, and she doesn't know who to trust. And it was just excellent. Like, I really loved our main character. Like, she is the definition of like a bad bitch. Like, you are on her side, you really want her to succeed, but then there's so many things that like keep going wrong, and you're like, how is she gonna make it out alive right now? But like, it was just so good. Also another one where it has multiple plot twists throughout the story. A few of them I saw coming, but there were quite a few as well where I was like, Miss Taylor Adams, like, how did you do that? Yeah, it was just a really good story, really amazing fleshed out characters. Like, every character feels very unique and very real, and it was just so good. I highly recommend this book, and yeah, just a nice fast gripping read. There's also a movie adaptation which I really want to watch at some stage as well to see if it lives up to the novel, but yeah, just really good and very thrilling, which you'd hope so considering the genre. Next I have Final Girls by Riley Sagar. This is one of the first thrillers that I think I read. Like, this was very early on in my journey with this genre, and it was the first Riley Sagar book that I read, and Riley Sagar is one of my all-time favorite thriller authors. So yeah, he really hooked me in with this novel. Like, this was excellent. I read this like quite a long time ago, like probably about 3 years ago now, but it has still stuck with me and has still become a book that I recommend to so many people. But basically, we follow our main character, Quincy. She is quite famous in the media for being one of 3 final girls. There's Quincy, Lisa, and Sam. She has obviously survived this very horrific, like traumatic experience, but when one of the final girls, Lisa, like dies all of a sudden and is murdered, the 3rd final girl, Sam, shows up on Quincy's doorstep and is like telling her all these things, and she's like, oh my god, like she's all of a sudden like in her life. Quincy starts to realize like, how much does she really know about Sam? Like, yeah, sure, they've all got this like shared trauma, and all 3 of them were like famous in the media, but how much does she really know about either of these girls? There's also like someone who was acting very suspicious. Like, a lot of these crazy things start happening to Quincy, so it's just so good. And then we also like follow what happened to Quincy, which resulted in her being a final girl, and a lot of the things from her past like start to come to light, and maybe things weren't as they seemed back in the day. It's just excellent. It really also turns the final girl trope on its head. I feel like when it comes to horror movies with final girls and stuff like that, every final girl is very similar in the sense that they're like the good girl, they're like having to act really tough all of a sudden. Like, it really turns that trope upside down and kind of gets rid of some of the things that we see in horror movies back in the day that are now quite dated. I just thought this was really fantastic and so gripping as well, like just genuinely so good, and I'm so due for a reread. This is, yeah, one of my favorite thrillers of all time, and I really recommend not only Final Girls but Riley Sagar's thrillers in general. The last of my physical books that I have is The Maidens by Alex McCallides. I read this last year and absolutely adored it. This is also just so particular to my taste. I loved The Silent Patient by Alex McCallides, which I would say is his more famous of his thrillers, but this one is so me that I just can't help but love this a bit more, and therefore recommend this in this video. Basically, we follow our main character, Mariana. She is a professor at a university. Clearly, I love campus novels that follow professors. Like, that is probably why I like this a little bit more than The Silent Patient, because campus novels are just, it's my favorite setting. I love them. Wait, sorry, no, she's not a professor. I got it wrong. She's not a professor. She's a group therapist. She used to go to this university, and at the university is a really charming Greek professor called Edward Fosker. Mariana does not trust him, and he has this group of like special students. They're all female, they're all obsessed with them. It's kind of like cultish, and they're called the Maidens. And when one of them dies, Mariana is certain that Edward Fosker is the murderer. So she does all this digging, trying to prove that this man murdered one of his students. And while she's doing all this investigating, things just spiral out of control, and she's learning all these other things about other situations, and it's crazy. Like, the characters, so good. It's so chilling, and this is one where the plot twist was just like, wow. Just the setting, the atmosphere, everything about this book is so good, and I really recommend it. The next book I want to recommend is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. I read this last year when I wasn't making videos, so I haven't really talked about it on my channel, but it is genuinely one of my favorite thrillers of all time. Like, the characters are so strong. It is absolutely fantastic. Basically, we follow this married couple. Been married for 15 years, they've got kids, all that sort of stuff. They've had like a pretty happy marriage. They've been really just like a normal couple. And then they realize they start to get a bit bored. So what they like to do, just for fun, is the husband will kind of like seduce this woman by creating this persona, and then together the two of them murder that woman. And they have a lot of fun doing that, and that's how they like spice up their marriage and keep it like fresh and fun, which is, you know, a really bizarre pastime to me. But like, trust me when I say read this book, because it is so fucking good. It really reminds me of like They Never Learn, The Kind Worth Killing, or The Maidens. Just like a really strong female main character who I'm just obsessed with. Like, I love her. It's also in the same vein of something like Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, which I only haven't mentioned in this video just because I feel like everyone knows that book. It's genuinely just such a perfect thriller. I read this one in one sitting as well. Such a page turner, and when everything wraps up at the end, you're just like, I remember audibly like going like, oh my god, like I was in shock. Nothing has gotten me like this. Like, I am well overdue for a reread of this, even though I only read it like less than a year ago. It is amazing. Like, if you're going to take any one recommendation from this video, please make it this one. But yeah, it's just fantastic. I absolutely love it. The next book I want to recommend is a little bit different to the other ones I've recommended in this video because it's more of like a science fiction thriller, but it is The One by John Mars. It's less science fiction, more dystopian, I would say. This one feels like a Black Mirror episode, if that makes sense. Like, it's not super science fiction, but it has aspects about technology which are very kind of spooky, thrilling. That's why I say it's very much like a Black Mirror episode. Basically, we follow 5 different main characters. The world in which this book is set is, I guess, one kind of in a dystopian future where this fantastic new app has been released called, like, I don't know, it's finding your soulmate, and basically they extract like your DNA and they basically find your perfect match, and this is supposed to be your soulmate. I read this a while ago, but from the top of my head, we follow the company like CEO who like created the app. We follow the story of a literal serial killer who finds his match and is like absolutely in love with her, and it is like was planning to kill her, but then it's like, wait, I'm in love. We follow a character who's in a very happy marriage to a woman, but his soulmate is a man, and he is completely convinced that he is straight. Then he meets this man and he's like, oh my god, hang on. It is so good. Like, genuinely, I wish I could remember more about it, but I'm recommending this to you because like every single chapter is like, it ends with a cliffhanger. Like, you want to know more, like you really do. And the way that everything wraps up is fantastic. Like the way that all the stories are intertwined. Like, I feel often with books that have like 5 different storylines happening at once, you can get very confused, or like one chapter might like, or one particular storyline might completely take you out of the story. But this is like every single storyline is just so, it just lines up so well, and you're never at one stage like finding it confusing. Like, it's so expertly crafted. The pace of the book was very well done. It was a very smooth read. Like, you just want to keep turning the page. And yeah, the fact that there is just like something shocking that happens like literally in every chapter, I highly recommend this book. I could not put it down. It was fantastic. And yeah, I genuinely just think everyone should read this book. And then finally, the last book that I want to share is a book that I also read this year, and it is The Venue by TJ Payne. This book was so fucking ridiculous, but so much fun. Like, it was so much fun. It was like, objectively, is it well written? No, but I feel like everyone can get at least some enjoyment out of this. It was also, I'm pretty sure, on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a Kindle and you have Kindle Unlimited, go download this book because it is fantastic. But basically, we follow our main character. She is recently going through a breakup with her long-term partner, but her and her ex-partner and her parents are going to the wedding of her childhood best friend, who she has been kind of estranged from, hasn't heard from him in a while. He's getting married to this woman, and the wedding is taking place overseas. So it's an international wedding, and all the guests, when they arrive, they have to wear these like watches, and they're not allowed their cell phones, and it's at this like really intense venue. Our main character starts to realize that when she's there, everyone who's been invited is like people that have wronged her childhood best friend in some way. She's really confused by the guest list, and so then she's really confused as to why she is there. Basically, the wedding isn't really your typical wedding. Like, they do the ceremony, they do the whatever, and then at the reception, it's revealed that in order to leave this venue, they have to kill someone. They have to at least kill one person to then be able to escape and like live freely, and then their minds will be altered so they won't like remember what happened. It is so ridiculous. It is absolutely feral. Such a good page turner. I loved our main character. She was such a badass. It was just so good, and like obviously really heartbreaking as well. And all of the developments of everything that happened, the entire plot was just so freaking good. I read this in like one sitting as well. Like, it was just so addicting. It was just ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And I really want the author to create a sequel that follows different characters, but like with the same concept in some way. Like, it was kind of like Hunger Games vibes, but very much not that, like much darker. Even though the Hunger Games is fucking dark, it's much darker and it's much more intense. And like the fact that the guy, the childhood friend, was such an incel, like, it was so good and so ridiculous. And some of the monologues in this book were crazy. But yeah, if this sounds up your alley, read it. But yeah, it's so good. But yeah, those are all the books that I wanted to recommend to you today. I hope you enjoyed. Please, if you have any favorite thrillers, let me know in the comments down below, because I love this genre so much. I have decided that it is my genre of the year. If last year's genre was romance, this year's genre is thrillers. Like, I'm obsessed with them. So yeah, I hope you guys got some good recommendations. I love you all. I have many more videos coming out, so I'm sure I'll see you soon. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have the most amazing day, and I will see you very soon in the next one.